Whether you drive a car,
need a car,
or just occasionally bum a ride with friends,
you've come to the right place.
Join Jill and Tom as they break down everything that's going on in the auto world.
New car reviews,
Shopping tips,
driving green,
electric cars,
classic cars,
and plenty of great guests.
This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, this is the Car Stuff Podcast, and I am Tom. Thank you for joining us today. If I sound a little breathless, it is because I actually rushed to get here today.
And yet you were still here before me.
I was. Yeah, you and I have to have a little talk about that later. Please do us a favor. Check us out at consumerguide.com. While you're there, check out our 2024 Best Buy list. You know, the 2025 list isn't that far away now. Years in auto world go fast. There's like dog years and then auto years, and they tend to go fast.
They like, instead of 7 years for every dog year, it's like a half a year for every automotive year.
Something.
Yeah.
It's something because the year starts like in September, and like by March, the year is half over.
It's essentially over by March.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. All right, but check us out at consumerguide.com. Also, while you're there, if you want to, you can stream the podcast right there on our homepage, but it's probably more fun if you just download it. And you know what's a lot of fun? Leaving us a great review. People would love that.
Yes.
All right, that voice is Jill Ciminillo. She's the managing editor of Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk.
You got that right.
I actually wrote down head of security. She's a freelance author, and she is a North American Car of the Year juror. How are you, Jill?
I'm doing well.
We have just blasted through a week of all sorts of crazy news.
Yeah.
One of the news stories that's probably a bigger deal behind the Iron Curtain, inside the industry, is the CDK Global disaster.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think it affected consumers that much.
Here's to hoping. I don't know if any numbers have come out yet about how many sales might have been missed or...
Yes.
Okay.
I have a number, and I forgot who brought it out. But in the what is this? This is July. So June, for June.
July 1st today.
Yeah. Happy new month. Apparently, we lost about 100,000 sales.
Wow, that's actually significant.
It is. It's like 7 or 8% of total sales. So that's a big deal. And that was just because of the slowdown of the process. Ugh. We know the dealers basically stayed open, plowed through, used paper, and everything was good. So that's that. The other number is dealers lost about $1 billion collectively on this. Ouch. So that's all 15,000 dealers.
Yeah. Ooh.
A lot of money.
$1 billion?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a lot of money. It's
split a lot of ways, but it's a big deal. So that's that story. CDK estimates that everyone will be up and running by July 4th, a day they'd hope to take off. But
yeah, not this year.
So that's that story. For people who don't remember, CDK is a provider of dealer management systems.
Yes.
They were hacked, and the systems became inoperable. And the big question mark, and we may have to talk about this more, even though I'm boring of the story, is if user information was compromised. And that's a big deal. And we don't know that. Yeah. We just know the system was hacked and was brought to its knees and couldn't operate, and people had to break out pencils with erasers.
And paper, actual paper.
And paper, yeah. So we don't know where this is going, but if consumer information was not compromised, this story's kind of coming to an end.
Yes.
Although there is the bad news that CDK is paying the ransom. And that's making a lot of people nervous. Yeah. Because obviously they're incentivizing doing this again.
Yep.
And if you're like another one of the companies in this industry, like, I don't know, Reynolds & Reynolds, you're like, oh, dude, don't pay that.
Yeah. You're like, dang it, we're next.
Other news.
Yes.
Other news, Tesla sales are still down. 2 quarters in a row now.
Yeah, and I don't think that has anything to do with Tesla necessarily being Tesla. I think it just has to do with the fact that other automakers are starting to put out viable electric vehicles.
Yeah, I think the big one is there's lots of competition.
Yeah.
And the other one is they have not updated their stuff.
Like ever.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you own an early Tesla Model Y, for what reason would you trade it in?
Yeah, if you own an early Tesla Model S, for that matter.
That hardly... Yeah, and that came out in 2011.
It looks essentially the same. Yeah. I mean, I think there are probably some mild refreshes, and the Teslarati out there are like, it looks completely different. They're yelling at the radio right now. I don't think it does.
They do not look completely different.
No. And I mean, surely, they've updated the software. They've added a yoke in some instances.
Which is not an incentive.
No.
And you're talking about the yoke steering wheel.
Yeah, it's not a real yoke. It just looks like one, but doesn't operate like like one. But
Also,
I mean,
the turn signal gets moved to a little flip switch on the wheel. It's no longer a stalk.
okay. So
Which really
made some
interferes
changes.
with the kind of natural flow of driving. If you're me and you've been driving for 40 years,
Yeah.
that's a little weird.
Yeah. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of things that electric vehicles do that are a little weird.
Yeah.
And, like with the shift on the gear shift, rather than like pulling it down on like the column shifter,
Yeah.
pulling it down, like you twist or you flip or, so there's certainly some, not just Tesla, but all electric EVs they do things differently sometimes.
I had this in my notes. We didn't get to it, and now I'm just going to mention it because it's a real non sequitur.
Okay.
The Rolling Stones album Some Girls from 1978,
Okay.
really underrated.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been listening to it this week.
Well, I have a sequitur to your non sequitur.
Yes.
So somebody told me, and this is kind of a fun fact, that the Rolling Stones were in Chicago over the weekend.
How would you know?
Because I kept getting text alerts. The Rolling Stones are in Chicago. But one of my friends had so this is a friend of a friend
There would be
kind of
less.
thing?
There would be less coverage of a Russian invasion of Chicago
Probably.
than there was of the Stones' visit to Chicago.
Probably. But somebody told me that their friend was working security for the Rolling Stones concert, and they needed to have 100 extra wheelchairs on hand. I'm like, oh, that's very telling about the audience.
I saw the Rolling Stones just before COVID,
Okay.
and I was young for the people in the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100 extra wheelchairs.
There were. Oh shoot! Who's the band that did Nights in White Satin?
You're asking the wrong person.
Moody Blues. There were guys walking around the concert wearing Moody Blues 50-year reunion tour T-shirts. That's how old. Also, they were awesome. All right, so that we got that out of the way. Here's a big story, and it's
Okay.
a big story, and there's little sub-stories that branch off of it, and we won't cover them all. Volkswagen, you've heard of them?
No.
Often
never.
considered the largest automaker in the world.
Yes.
Just spent $1 billion to work with Rivian with a promise of $4 billion more.
Yeah.
Let's walk away from that with just a couple of takeaways. One, Rivian just got its ass saved.
Yes. Again.
And Volkswagen has proven to be very, very, very bad at writing software for electric vehicles because that's what they're doing here. They want Rivian software.
Right.
And this is kind of a nightmare. And here's just a little rule for the youngsters in marketing school. Do not brand something that's going to suck.
Okay.
And in this case, Volkswagen has a division called Cariad, which is their software development company that they only started a few years ago. And Cariad has done nothing right.
I'm like, I actually have never heard of this.
That's okay. They should never have branded it. They should, because does General Motors have an EV software company? We don't know.
They should have certainly somebody who's talking about Apple CarPlay in their EVs, but
But they haven't branded bad decision making yet.
No,
but
they just make bad decisions.
Cariad has been a huge failure. So
Okay.
Volkswagen's been going to Chinese companies and now to Rivian for software architecture.
Okay.
And this is good news for Rivian.
yeah.
And the factory that Rivian halted production on in Georgia,
Okay.
I'm going to pretend like I didn't just need to look that up. It looks like production of that's going to go ahead again.
That's good.
So second factory is going to go up. The R2 and R3, those adorable little,
The smaller Rivian EVs.
those seem to be guaranteed to see production
That's awesome.
in a segment where they need product.
Yeah. No, and those two little EVs look amazing. So, especially the R3.
Oh, yeah.
It's adorable.
It's adorable.
It's Jill-sized.
So it looks a little Soviet, but that's okay. It looks cool.
Yeah. Well, so that's all good news. And here was the thing, and it's really funny because last week I started writing a story about Scout Automotive, which is another offshoot from Volkswagen, and it'll be an all-electric brand, kind of bringing back the old Harvester International Scout.
And probably direct competition for Jeep, at least Jeep's off-roady stuff.
And that was what it was originally. It was direct competition to Jeep. And so I was just like, I don't think a lot of people know what Scout is. And so I started writing this story. And then Volkswagen makes this announcement about a partnership with Rivian. And I'm like, I wonder what this means for Scout. I think it's only going to help them.
It's a good question.
And so I actually included that then into my story about what is Scout.
Yeah, and I don't know where Scout's going now. If it may not change at all. The plans may not change at all. They just have architecture to put stuff on, maybe. Like, can you build the Scout products on Rivian architecture? Probably.
Yeah, and I mean, all along they had been saying that the Scout architecture would not be Volkswagen architecture, and I think they just didn't know what it would be, and so now I think we have a better idea of what it might be.
Yeah, Scout, for people who don't know, was originally a brand that wrapped up consumer products back in 80, 81.
Yep.
I knew a guy whose dad was a Scout dealer.
Okay.
But the Scout and the Scout 2 were delightful Wrangler-like, more Bronco-like vehicles.
Yeah.
Very off-roady, not that consumer-friendly, but meant to be durable. And to a lot of ways, they serve the commercial market, but you needed pickup trucks and nice little SUVs to get where you were going, so that was part of what they did as well. But that is what Jeep was selling at the time, too.
Yeah.
So interesting stuff. But Scout could work very well. I don't know that that brand name has any equity at all. And as Sam Fiorani, who's going to join us later in the show, had mentioned, this is probably just Volkswagen's way to get around its dealer network.
Could be.
So they can start selling crossovers direct to consumer.
I mean, could
Maybe.
be. Could be. I don't know. But I think that this partnership or investment in Rivian has a lot of interesting implications.
I'm just glad Rivian's going to make it.
Yeah.
The products seem. Have you driven one?
I have.
I
I've
have
driven
not.
both the R1T and the R1S.
General impressions?
Good. I mean, the only annoying thing that I found about either vehicle, and this is just, it harkens back to electric vehicles do things differently. The side mirror adjustments are located in the center screen, and they...
Oh, no good.
Yeah, and furthermore, making matters worse, you only have like 3 seconds to start making your adjustment once you tap that you're going to make the adjustment. And if you don't do it immediately, it disappears and you have to go tap, tap, tap to get back into the screen again to continue making your adjustments. And I don't know about you, but, well, I do know you don't wear high heels, but I wear high heels. I wear tennis shoes. I wear different kinds of shoes every time I drive. So I readjust my side mirrors every time I get in the car. That would get old really fast.
So 2 points. I rarely wear heels. But
I've never seen you in them, so that's good to know.
Yeah. I wouldn't wear them to a podcast recording.
No.
But the other thing about that, and to your point about mirror adjustment, is you want to be able to make it from where you are.
Yes.
So you want it on a door handle so that you don't have to lean forward. If you have to lean forward, it's impossible to adjust for where you just were because you're not looking at the mirror from the same angle.
Exactly. And that was a big complaint I had from Toyota many years ago. I think it was Toyota because they used to put their mirror adjustments on the dash, kind of up by where the mirror was. And so you always had to reach up to like adjust it rather than it being just on the door. And I'm like, this defeats the purpose.
My 84 Sunbird, my 85 Scirocco had a remote mechanical thing. It was like a joystick that I think was on the A-pillar. On the passenger side to adjust on the driver's side to adjust the passenger side, and then you did the other one manually. So you always got fingerprints on it. But I think that in my Sunbird, you had to have a passenger there to adjust the passenger side one for you, if you had one at all.
Yeah.
When Saturns came out, the passenger side mirror was an option.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, we've come a long way. All right. I think we burned through like 30 topics in a very short period of time. Did I mention the Stones album?
You did.
Okay, good.
And I also mentioned 100 wheelchairs.
Yeah.
Yes. Extra wheelchairs, by the way.
They're ageless. Okay. Yeah. You drove kind of an industry benchmark, the Volvo XC60.
Yes.
And that was not a plug-in hybrid.
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was the plug-in hybrid.
It was the plug-in
All my notes are for nothing now.
Oh.
All right. Tell us about the XC60. Compact crossover from Volvo, plug-in hybrid. What do you got?
Yeah. So I really like this vehicle. It is, and I should start by saying I really like Volvo. I think that they are comfortable. You have great visibility out all of the windows. They're really safe. The seats are ergonomically correct. You can adjust, for height, for seat bottom length. The seats are highly adjustable. Everything about the Volvo vehicles is just, they're comfortable. It's like getting Volvo and Subaru, I always say they're like putting on your favorite pair of jeans because they're just comfortable immediately.
I might agree with you there. I think that the Volvo experience is highly dependent on the cabin. It is very clean. It is very open. It is very nicely designed. It's easy to see out of. The whole experience is very luxury, comfort-oriented and very premium and modern.
Yeah.
I generally don't find Volvos that much fun to drive. Mm-hmm. I think the handling's really flippy-floppy compared to other European vehicles, but they ride well.
Yeah.
And they're quiet on the highway, so they're good long haulers. But the minute things get curvy, you're going to wish you were in a German vehicle.
Yeah, I mean, but it's an SUV. It's an SUV, so I don't expect any SUV necessarily to be sporty. But because SUVs are meant to be long-haul drivers.
Yeah, but the BMW X3 totally kicked this car's ass around cones. I'm just saying.
It's also going to be more expensive.
It is.
So, I mean...
Maybe. Not a lot more expensive. Volvos get expensive.
They do. And
how much was your car?
I was like pulling up the sticker sheet because this did get pricey. Because in addition to being a plug-in hybrid vehicle, which adds to the cost, it was also the top-tier ultimate trim. So it was $76,000.
That's a lot for a compact crossover.
But if you looked at the plug-in hybrid version, I'm assuming the X3 has a plug-in hybrid version. I don't drive a lot of BMWs, so I honestly don't know.
There is not an X3. It's the i3? I forgot.
Okay. So, at any rate, if you looked at a vehicle that was like that from BMW, it would be more expensive than that. I can pretty much guarantee it. But this vehicle had a base price of $67,000, and then it added a couple of pricey packages. It had the Bowers & Wilkins premium sound system.
Which, if you care about music, you want.
You do.
Because it's very good. It's legit.
It is. And it had the active chassis with air suspension, and then it added... very expensive wheels. The wheels were like $1,500. So it did add some pricey options. But overall, I really like the XC60. The vehicle I was in had the wool seats, so not leather. And
those are classy.
They are very classy, and the heated seats worked really well on them. Yes, I used them when it was like 100 degrees outside, no judging. And I don't know. I just always enjoy the smooth quietness that you get from a Volvo.
Yeah, they're legit.
And I will say, too, because it was a plug-in hybrid, it had about 40 miles of all-electric range, which I also really appreciated.
Yeah, and the thing for people... My problem with plug-in hybrids is people don't plug them in.
You know what? I think that's old data because it was people in California who were buying them because they just wanted to get into the HOV lane or whatever it was. But I think nowadays people who are buying plug-in hybrids are actually plugging them in.
I hope so. And I need to see more data. But I've seen very bad...
We need new data.
I've seen very bad numbers suggesting that people are not plugging... Chad Kirshner, I think, of EV, what is this company?
Is it EV Pulse?
EV Pulse.
Yeah.
Had data that suggested people are not plugging in hybrids.
I would like to look at everybody except for California. I think California is an outlier because people were buying those vehicles for bad reasons.
And the thing about that, too, don't buy a plug-in hybrid if you're not going to use it because you're just carrying around extra weight.
And extra expense.
Extra expense, yep.
You're spending about $10,000 more.
Also, our confusion about the X3 is that there used to be a plug-in hybrid version of it.
Yes.
There is not at the moment.
Okay.
So there's that. But the X3 is a joy to drive. But your final takeaway, XC60, plug-in hybrid, which is called Recharge.
It's called the Recharge.
Yeah.
My full takeaway is it's comfortable. It is fun. I won't say fun to drive. It is easy to drive, smooth and effortless. I like the 40 miles of all-electric range. And I like the fact that you have a Google operating system that also has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I will never let that die.
Here's the thing about that. What do you think of the actual touchscreen? For people who don't know, the data that you're looking for is stacked in bars on the center screen. And you swipe them to the side to access them.
You press them and then it opens up.
And what does the swiping get you? Like additional? Because there's a motion where you can swipe to the side. And
I didn't swipe.
You just always touch them. Mm-hmm. So they're stacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. That works for you?
It's one of those things, as an owner, you would get used to. It's not initially terribly intuitive. You have to get used to the home button, and you have to get used to the little button that you press below the center screen to bring you everything back to home.
Yeah, it's a little non-intuitive. I think that over time you get used to it. One of the interesting things about it, kind of a knock on Volvo, you've got this really interesting, someone thought about it, multicolor display. It presents very well if you look at it. Mm-hmm. But if you go deeper into that menu, you get stuff that looks like a 1980 computer screen. Like it's just like, what happened?
Yeah.
And if you're trying to adjust the tone controls, the treble or the bass, you're going down like 6 menus.
Yeah.
And you get something that looks gnarly.
Yeah.
Very weird.
So I will say the things that you are going to touch frequently are pretty upfront and easy to access, but the things that you'll probably adjust once are under deep cover, like 6 taps to get to, like your sound. But like as an owner, you'd probably set up your sound once and then you'll probably never touch it again.
Probably. So the XC60, just for people who want to know, starts right around $50,000 for what they call the B5 drivetrain, which is just a plug-in hybrid, not a plug-in hybrid.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, 48-volt hybrid.
Yeah.
And then the plug-in hybrid, what was it, 76?
67 was the base price,
and then
it, as tested, was 76
with the Bowers and Wilkins stereo.
Yeah.
Which is a big ad.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And you like the vehicle?
I liked it.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we talk to Sam Fiorani. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while about the Chinese car companies that we should be talking about.
Yes.
All right, we're going to take a break and be right back.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, we're back. This is the Consumer Guide Car Stuff Podcast. I am Tom. She is Jill. Jill, how's it going?
It is going well.
We got through a lot of stuff in the first segment. Maybe not as neatly as we should have.
Yeah.
You're right. I'm going to need my headphones.
I know. You're taking off your headphones. And I'm like, we have a guest coming up. You're going to kind of need those.
I hate headphones. Can you tell?
No, I can't.
Yeah. Uh-huh. All right. Help me out here.
Do I have to?
Yep.
All right. Twitter. You have a Twitter handle and you do a thing.
Yep. I'm Car Guy Tom on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter. I think I entertain people. I find a lot of cars. I never talk about the Saturday collection.
No, you don't talk about the Saturday collection.
But Saturday is the day that I go out and take whatever car I'm driving for a long drive.
Okay.
And I tend to go out and hit the highway and go out suburban and rural. But that's where I find the best cars. And I always find at least four cars. That's the Saturday collection.
Got it.
Car Spotter hashtag. There you go.
Yes.
Car Guy Tom on Twitter. All right. We've got a conversation coming up in just a moment with Sam Fiorani of AutoForecast Solutions that I have been dying to have.
Yes.
We talked to Sam a few years ago, 3 years ago maybe, about the Chinese car companies that we should know, and a lot has changed since then.
A lot has changed. Like in the last 6 months, I think.
Yeah. So Sam is going to get us up to speed. He is Sam Fiorani. He is the Vice President of Global Forecasting at AutoForecast Solutions. I am mumbling today.
First the headphones, then the mumbling.
Yep. This is why I shouldn't drink before the show.
Yeah.
Sam, how are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Apparently, I'm not so good. Jill's doing okay.
I ran before this, so I'm doing great.
Oh, man. So, Sam, tell us about AutoForecast Solutions.
We provide analytical services and forecasting services to the auto industry. Anyone who needs to know about what's going on or what's going to go on, we're the people to talk to.
Now, that excellent newsletter that you shared with us, that is only available to your customers. Is that correct?
That is correct. We provide a monthly newsletter for what's going on and what changes have happened to the forecast.
Well, they are a lucky lot because that's very informative. Before we start, I just wanted to ask you one question really quick, and that is why does Joe Biden hate Volvo?
Hate Volvo? Well, they have models that were planned to be imported from China, and that's the problem. You got to charge tariffs on all of them.
Yeah, we could talk about that in a little bit maybe, but the Volvo situation is interesting because they've already made plans, or Geely, their parent company, has made plans to start building vehicles in South Korea with Renault to dodge this bullet. But Sam, we brought you on today to tell us a little bit about the Chinese companies that we should know about. We're hearing an awful lot about the Chinese threat, how they're going to bring Chinese cars to the U.S., but there are a lot of companies over there that changing the top ranks of whom we should worry about, but maybe you can walk us through this environment.
Yeah, the Chinese market has blossomed in the last, 20 years, and we've been watching some of these companies try to come into the U.S. market. They've been appearing at car shows for 15 to 20 years.
Yeah.
And early on, those cars were not competitive here. But lately, all those cars from the same companies are world-class. They're ready to go.
And there's a few of them that have risen to the top, and I think the one that most Americans probably heard of is BYD, because they sell a $10,000 electric vehicle called the Seagull. But there's a lot more to the companies that are really leading the charge over there.
Yeah, BYD is a big one, partially thanks to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett made a name for the company when he invested in it back in around 2009. And today the company is leading the way for electric vehicles out of China. It's currently leading the way for vehicles in China. So it's the top-selling brand. And we expect it to be a player when they get to export into major markets like the United States. That's way down the line at the moment, but they are coming into Mexico. They are already in Europe, and we're seeing their vehicles selling fairly well. And they have a wide range from the low-cost Seagull all the way up to some off-brand, new brand luxury cars at the top.
And BYD is Zeekr, right? That's one of the BYD brands?
Zeekr is a Geely brand.
Oh, it's a Geely brand. My mistake. Okay. You had mentioned luxury brands. Lynk & Co. was one company. I think that was a brand that they were developing for U.S. market.
That's also a Geely brand. Geely has populated a whole bunch of brands that they wanted to export because I'm guessing that they didn't like the name Geely for export markets.
Okay.
So they devised brands like Lynk & Co. and Zeekr, and they own and Polestar. So they are ready to go to the market with Chinese branded models.
Well, let's talk about Geely because that's a big one too. And Geely, I don't know if a lot of people know this, own Volvo.
Yeah.
Or have control over Volvo.
Yes, they own Volvo. They purchased Lotus. They've purchased the taxi company in England.
Yeah.
They have their fingers in a lot of pies, and so they're trying to get exports to other countries. And they have a plant in South Carolina building Volvos at the moment, and Polestars are going to be built there before the end of the year.
And that arrangement just got upset by. We just talked about Joe Biden and the tariff on the XC30 that was going to be coming over. But one of the deals was that they were going to build a very expensive car there, the XC90, large EX90, thank you, vehicle there. And then there was going to be like trade credits for that, and they were going to bring in the EX30 under those credits, and that's been upset, correct?
Correct. They had started building the S60 sedan, and that was part of their export bargain. For every vehicle you can ship out, you can ship a vehicle in.
Oh,
and
okay.
that was supposed to offset the Polestars and some of the Volvos that were coming in. But now with a 100% tariff, it becomes a lot more difficult because their volumes are just not going to be great enough of exports from South Carolina to offset EX30s and Polestar 3s, 4s, all these new models that they plan on bringing here.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is the EX30 was actually supposed to come to the United States last year. And, Volvo did a big drive for us last year in Spain so that we would have the opportunity to drive it. And it was one of the top 3 finalists for the North American Car of the Year. And then at the last minute, they had to pull out because they weren't going to be able to sell a vehicle in the United States before the end of the year. And so we carried them over to this year, and it looks like we're going to have to pull them from this year's list because we got a note from Volvo saying they are waiting for the Belgium plant to be up and running to start bringing the EX30 to the United States in 2025.
Which should hurt their cost advantage, too, because they were going to bring that thing at a bargain.
Yeah.
Yes, no, exactly. We were having trouble figuring out how they were going to sell it, even from China at that price point. Mm-hmm. But bringing them in from Belgium will just boost that cost even more. And if they do bring them in at $35,000 like they promised, then they're going to probably lose money on them.
Yeah, which is unfortunate because I don't know if you've had the chance to drive it yet, but it is a pretty phenomenal vehicle.
Everybody has said great things about it, and it was going to be Volvo's big splash into electric vehicles at a low price point and able to get to a mass market. That would have been great for the brand. The EX90 is going to be much lower volume in the U.S., but it's a showcase for their electric vehicle potential.
Have you driven that?
No, they actually have the drive program for that coming up. I think it might be in August. It's coming up within the next couple of months, so
Gotcha.
I'll be driving it soon.
So, Sam, we just talked about BYD and Geely. Those are the 2 brands, too, making pretty big inways into Western Europe, correct?
They are among the brands there. There are models from Great Wall and Chery that are also sold in Europe. It depends on which country you're in and how many vehicles they sell, but these are the major 4 at the moment selling around the world.
Tell us about Great Wall and Chery.
Great Wall was originally, in my mind, the first Chinese brand to come to the U.S. It was going to be the one coming to the U.S. because they were building trucks, they were building SUVs, they were building the vehicles that Americans wanted. And back in around 2010, I anticipated them to be here. But again, like everybody else, their quality wasn't quite there. And as they've developed over the last 10, 15 years, they've spun off a few brands that are specifically designed for export. They have a brand called Ora, O-R-A, and Havel, which is their trucks. And these brands are tailored to exports. They are tailored to foreign markets. And the one that I really expected to hit the U.S. is a new one called Tank, which is their SUVs. And the only thing holding them back right now is the cost, is the tariffs.
And Havel is selling trucks here, are they not?
Havel is not selling them in the U.S.
They're not.
They do sell them in Europe and in South America, but they do not sell them in the U.S. The only Chinese-built vehicles sold in the United States at the moment are a couple of Volvos, the Polestar 2, and a Lotus model that just came in this summer, and the Lincoln, it's like a Nautilus.
Yeah.
And the Buick Envision.
Okay, I thought there were some heavy trucks that were making their way over here.
There are a couple BYD buses that are built in California.
Okay. All right. And Sam, tell us about Chery. Chery is interesting because I remember when Malcolm Bricklin, was it Visionary Motors, was working to get Chery over here. And then a little bit later, I think Dodge was looking at bringing in a Hornet that was built by Chery. And neither of those things happened. But they seemed like they had a path to the U.S., and then they lost it.
Chery was on a few people's radar. Malcolm Bricklin's Visionary vehicles were going to bring them in about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And after that fell through, Dodge was working on the Hornet. Well, it fell through because Dodge was working on the Hornet with them. And I think Malcolm Bricklin sued Chery over that one. And when those two fell apart, about 10 years later, a company in California was going to import them, a company called Ha Automotive, H-A-A-H.
Oh, I remember that.
They devised a way to bring them in under their own brands. They were going to be not Chery, but they were going to be their own brands. And they had a whole lineup set to go. And Ha was a bit underfinanced, and so that deal fell through before the tariffs hit.
That Geely has done quite a good job with its Volvo acquisition, and that Tata, the Indian industrial company, has not done very well with Jaguar Land Rover.
Well, Tata's problem with Jaguar Land Rover is Jaguar Land Rover. Both companies have given them money and allowed them to do their own thing, but Jaguar is in a very competitive market with BMWs and Mercedes, and finding buyers for their products is really difficult. As a Jaguar fan myself, I'm disappointed in it, but buyers are just not there to buy Jaguar. Land Rover's doing better, but it's still it was nice that Tata financed them and let them do their own thing, a lot like Volvo and Geely. But there just aren't buyers out there for Jaguars at the moment.
This is a little off topic, but I'm going to argue that Jaguar crossover names stink. I-Pace, E-Pace. What are we getting there?
F-Pace.
F-Pace.
I don't understand the nomenclature.
Historically, their names were type. They had the S-type, they had the F-type.
Yep.
Those names go back a long way, back to the E-type. And I understand that, but I'm with you on the Pace part. It just doesn't work for me.
So, Sam, before we run out of time, I wanted to ask you a little bit about companies that we hear about that are being partnered with. We talked a little bit about Leaf Motor at some point, but there's also like SAIC, Brilliance. These companies we're hearing about Western companies tying up with for different reasons. What's going on there?
In China, originally, if you were to build a vehicle there as a Western company, you had to have a 50-50 joint venture.
Okay.
You weren't allowed to own more than 50% of the company. And so companies like General Motors tied up with SAIC, and Volkswagen tied up with FAW. These are state-owned companies. These are very large automakers that are owned by the state or local governments, unlike BYD, which is privately owned. Go ahead.
I was going to say, is it fair to say that the state-owned companies are kind of dragging the privately owned companies, especially in terms of EVs?
Well, the SAIC in particular is doing very well in export markets. They own the MG brand, and MG is doing fairly well in countries like Germany and parts of Europe and even in Mexico. So they have that strength of that brand that everybody knows, and they're doing okay with that. The big problem is going to be countries like the United States, where the idea of Chinese imports using our data, and when you have a state-owned company coming in, that's even worse.
Sure.
You know, it's one thing to have a Chinese automaker, but it's another one to have a state-owned automaker bringing their products in here. That could be the bigger fear of governments around the world.
In your last newsletter, you noted that Chinese companies were to be underestimated at our own peril. Tell us a little bit about what you meant there.
Yeah, the Chinese companies are coming to every country. They're coming to other markets, and they can lose money to start with. They just want to gain market share, and they're pushing for that really fast.
And that's really a big difference between Western automakers, especially American automakers, and the Chinese automakers, is that American automakers really have to show quarterly profits. They need to show regular profit, regular money making, and return on investment. And the Chinese makers aren't that way. The privately owned ones are privately owned, so they only have to answer to themselves. And the state-owned companies, right, they don't really care that much.
No, the idea of making money initially is not the goal. The goal is to get market share to eventually make money and to have that command of market with volumes. And they're getting that in the African countries. They're doing that in South America. They've moved up towards Mexico. They're working their way into Europe. They are pushing for this market share, and they're gaining it.
And that Mexican beachhead's really interesting, too. There's just a lot of vehicles, some sold by General Motors, of Chinese vehicles in Mexico. And the Mexican public seems okay with it. They're buying them.
Absolutely.
And they're expanding their manufacturing presence down there, too.
Absolutely. The Chinese brands make up about 10% of the Mexican market, and Chinese-built vehicles make up about 20% of the Mexican market.
Wow.
They are coming in really fast. These companies didn't have more than 1% market share just 5 years ago. So they're coming in really fast, and having that market share allows them to build a local plant to supply vehicles locally, and the plan is to bring them across the border eventually.
Sam, is there any reason why in the Mexican market the consumers might be a little bit more readily willing to accept Chinese brands than they might be eventually in the U.S.?
First is price. These vehicles are well priced and good quality. Local brands. There are no Mexican brands, so there's no patriotism towards your own brand.
Okay.
If you're buying a Ford or a Chevy or a Dodge, you're buying it because it's American. In Mexico, you don't have that patriotism.
Interesting.
So how long do you think it's going to be before we see somebody like a BYD bringing an actual vehicle for sale in the United States?
We've said it was going to be 5 years before the Biden-era tariffs came in. And it may push it back a bit, but if we don't see it before the end of this decade, I would be very surprised.
Wow.
And do you think that by building in Mexico, that would usher in the BYD era in the United States? Like if it's built in Mexico, doesn't that mean it could easily come up here?
Well, not easily, but as long as they get enough domestic content to get to Mexican production, then they can bring them in at a 2.5% tariff. And if they get them high enough, it falls under the USMCA and they can come in for free.
There
So
you go.
the idea of getting enough local content is the next step after they build these plants in the next couple of years.
Interesting, because we've heard the BYD executives say that they have no plans to bring, their vehicles to the United States at this time. But yeah, I just think that means this year is not that year.
That's all political. That's just trying to make sure that nobody steps on their growth plans. And once they get established in Mexico, then they'll come across the border.
Yeah.
All right, Sam, enough about China. Anything going on in Pennsylvania? What's new at the Boyertown Museum of Historic Vehicles?
We just generated a new Afternoons, as we call it, the YouTube show that we put out where we talked about tchotchkes and knickknacks. Kendra, the curator of the museum, and I sat down and talked about all kinds of little items that the museum has and that I have in my personal collection that I've collected over the years. So we just talked about that one. And we're planning on doing another one very shortly here.
Cool. We will link to that in our show notes. Sam, real quick, remind us about AutoForecast Solutions.
AutoForecast Solutions is on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. We're on all the majors. We provide data and analytical services to the automotive industry. And if you're in the business, give us a call and we'll walk you through what we can offer.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Always great to be here.
All right, that was Sam Fiorani with AutoForecast Solutions. After the break, the best quiz ever. All right, we're going to take a break and be right back.
Questions or comments?
Drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.
That's carstuff@consumerguide.com. Welcome back to the Car Stuff Podcast.
All right, we're back. I'm Tom. She's Jill. This is the Car Stuff Podcast, and it's quiz time. Jill, did I mention the Rolling Stones album, Some Girls?
Yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
All right, you're in social media.
I am.
All right. I guess that's all we have to do there.
I'll just say that if you are on a social media platform, I am too. And you can find me at Jill Ciminillo, and I use the hashtag Car du Jour. And on my TikTok account, specifically right now, I have a video that's blowing up because I mentioned subscription fees in the Toyota Camry.
Oh.
And a lot of people don't understand that new vehicles today, pretty much all of them have some kind of a subscription fee associated with it for the app usage, to like remote start your vehicle, and you'll usually get some kind of a free trial with that.
Which is why we're not talking about it.
Yeah. But
if you go and buy the vehicle, you're not going to run into this stuff mostly for 36 months.
yeah, but you will run into it eventually.
You will. And by then it's too late, sucker.
Yeah, exactly. So people are angry. They don't like subscription fees. So yeah.
Well, they don't. And Mary Barra, CEO of General Motors, has talked about how much money this is going to bring in the future. Although we had that little Buick debacle where the subscription fee was standard, like you were locked into it from the date of purchase.
Yeah.
If you wanted to use some of the stuff, that went away pretty quick.
Yeah.
But we keep finding manufacturers just sticking their toe too far into that water and then kind of having to pull back.
Yeah, well,
But we're going to get there.
Yeah, the only automaker I know of right now that essentially gives you a free trial for the life of the first owner on like digital key, map integration, that kind of stuff. Hyundai, Genesis, Kia.
Yeah.
But other than that, pretty much everybody else has subscription fees.
We don't talk about this enough, but Hyundai and Kia still have the good warranty too.
Yep.
We should, and I don't even write about that, and I should.
Yep.
It's good stuff. All right, today's quiz. Are you ready?
I am never ready.
The topic is spelling.
As a journalist, that should be a high point, but
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I GTS a lot when I'm trying to spell something. So
GTS?
Google that, SHIT.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, because Word doesn't really know model names.
No.
All right, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay, 5 questions. We got to roll through this quick. We're a little behind
Okay.
schedule here. 5 questions plus the bonus question. You need 3 total of all 6
Yes.
to score a victory.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
I'm just going to give you a model. I just want you to spell it for me.
That's not fair.
How hard can that be?
You're supposed to give me multiple choice here.
No, it's too hard. I thought about that. All right.
Boo.
In the 80s and into the 90s, General Motors built a vehicle. Oldsmobile built a vehicle called the Sierra. It was on GM's A-body platform. Front-wheel drive was like the Celebrity and the
Right.
Pontiac 6000. I need you to spell Sierra.
Well, it can't be like the Toyota Sierra, SIERRA, so it can't be
GMC.
that. Oh, GMC, yes. And I'm thinking Sienna, so it can't be like that. I'm gonna go completely off the wall because I've never heard of this vehicle.
You've never heard of the Sierra?
I've never heard of this
Because
vehicle.
you've probably passed one in traffic. Millions of them out there. Well, not anymore. They're all rusted through, but...
I'm gonna say CIARA.
So close.
Okay.
You want to take another crack at it?
CIARRA?
No, CIERA.
Okay.
All right, Jill, you have no points.
All right.
I'm gonna write that
I
down.
knew it couldn't be an S.
No points. All right.
All right. Yeah, your favorite phrase, Jill has no points, blah, blah, blah.
One of the most beautiful American vehicles ever built. Designed
Says
by
Tom.
No, you'd find a lot of people would agree with me on this.
Okay.
Designed by legendary designer Raymond Loewy, was the Studebaker Avanti. 1962 to 1963, right at the tail end of Studebaker there. Avanti. I need you to spell Avanti.
AVANTI.
Correct. You have a
I
point.
remember seeing that.
Do you know the car?
I'm sure I've seen it. My dad and I, when they lived in Florida, there was the Lake Mirror Classic every year it was a huge classic car show in Lakeland, Florida, and we would go every year to that, and I remember seeing it there. So I couldn't pick it out of a lineup, but I remember seeing it.
It kind of played a role somewhere between the Thunderbird and the Corvette.
Okay.
But beautiful car.
Okay.
Absolutely beautiful. Some performance, too. All right, the Pontiac Aztek, 2001 to 2005. I need you to spell Aztek.
This one I have heard of.
Yeah. Crossover, ugly.
It is arguably
much
the
maligned.
ugliest vehicle ever built, next to the
ugliest ever built.
The Toyota Echo, also very ugly.
I spotted an Echo this weekend. It's in my Saturday collection.
Okay. So Aztek, I think it was AZTEK?
Yep.
Okay.
Funny story about that. 2001 or so, early days of the web.
Okay.
And I think they did a Super Bowl ad or some major ad for Pontiac. It might have been, maybe it was the Academy Awards or something. But after the ad, no one found it on the web because they spelled Aztek wrong, basically.
Right.
Early marketing, early web optimization.
Well, so, modern day example of that is Kia's rebranding of their...
that logo?
Yeah, their logo. And when they first started putting that on their vehicles, people were searching for what is the KN car brand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a problem.
Yeah.
And if you talk to anyone from Kia, they would deny that it was a problem.
Yeah, no, huge problem.
Huge problem. All right, you've got two. You're doing good. Chrysler Concorde, 1993 to 2004. That's the Chrysler Concorde, not the AMC Concorde.
Oh, and I feel like my dad had one of these as a company car.
Might have.
I think it was CONCORD. I kind of want to put the E on the end, but I'm not going to do it.
You needed the E.
Oh!
Yeah, the original AMC Concorde that we just spoke with Joe Ligo about, no E.
No E.
But the Chrysler Concorde, E.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think here. The Concorde, the plane, was spelled with an E.
Okay.
But Concord, Massachusetts, no E.
No E.
All right, you still have the two. You need one more.
All right.
Two more choices, or two more chances. The Buick Riata, 1988 to 1991 coupe and convertible, GM E-body architecture. Good-looking car, two-seater.
Oh.
Kind of collectible now.
I feel like my uncle might have had one of these. I'm going to say RIATTA.
No, the Riata was REATTA.
Okay.
Yeah, you need the bonus question.
All right.
You've got two.
All right.
Are you ready?
I am not ready.
You're going to get this one. It's easy.
They are never easy.
Jill, you know what makes a great pet?
There's so many things going through my head, and none of them are politically correct, so I'm not going to say any of them. What makes a good pet?
Hermit crab.
Okay.
I had hermit crabs. Did you have hermit crabs?
No.
They were long-lived. They were fun. They were hardy. Had them in an aquarium.
Oh, so much more I could say to that. Okay.
But they did smell bad.
Yeah.
Hermit crabs kind of smell bad.
Okay.
I owned them as a child. All right, that's from my notes. According to Google, there are about 40 species of hermit crab. I need you to tell me which of the following is not real.
Okay.
Are you ready? Mm-hmm. The Halloween hermit crab.
Okay.
The coconut hermit crab.
Okay.
I pronounced this last night. Clibinarius tricolor hermit crab.
Okay.
Or the Baltic whistler hermit crab. I think it's Clibinarius.
Because that makes so much difference. Yeah. Got it.
Yeah.
That one. Yeah, I've heard of that one.
You might have. Big sign in a store window.
I mean, Halloween doesn't seem like it should be a hermit crab.
It's weird that they would be seasonal.
Named after, it only comes out...
Seasonal pets.
It only comes out in October. Otherwise, it's stuck in its shell.
It would be sad to buy pets that only live for like a season.
Well, I mean, maybe he's alive longer than that, but you only see him once.
You put him in a box 9 months of the year, 10 months of the year.
It's kind of like the Christmas cactus, where it only blooms once a year.
Yeah. Halloween coconut, Clibinarius tricolor, or Baltic whistler.
So I figured the third one you couldn't possibly have made up. Because, where would you come up with a name like Clibinarius?
And why was I trying to pronounce a word I made up?
Exactly, because you would just know how it was pronounced.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that one's real.
Okay. I'm going to give that one to you, too. It's real.
It's real.
So
Okay, so we have Halloween coconut, and what was the last one?
Baltic Whistler.
Baltic Whistler. Well, that's the only one that has 2 words. Other than I'm like completely like I have no idea. So I'm gonna go with Baltic Whistler.
You are correct.
Huh?
You just saved yourself.
Huh?
Baltic Whistler is the fake. I am autographing this and handing it to you.
Yeah, that was not easy.
But it was fun. Also, it was easy for me, just having you spell stuff.
Fun fact of knowing that you had a pet as a child that wasn't a cat, because you have cats now.
Yeah, I had dogs. I had fish.
And you
had a lot of fish.
Whatever that was.
Want to know a crazy thing?
Do you know what kind?
What?
What kind of crab you had?
No idea.
Okay.
They weren't labeled.
It was a Clibonarius or whatever.
Yeah, probably.
A tricolor.
They weren't labeled. I have a fish, a Cory cat. Those are the little silver, sometimes black and white cats that hang around the bottom. Very likable cats. They're functional. They clean the tank. They're very friendly. They're never aggressive. I have one I bought in either 87 or 91. Still alive.
Okay.
Just saying. Still there in my tank. Seems happy.
Okay.
Still moves around. So old fish.
Very old fish.
That's where I was going with it. You know, we didn't talk about with Sam, but I just wanted to mention one of the reasons we're talking about these Chinese car companies now is that the Chinese market is in heavy contraction. Consumers have stopped buying cars.
Yeah.
And the federal government there can't keep deciding whether or not it wants to incentivize EVs specifically.
Yeah.
So Chinese car makers, suffering from a great deal of overcapacity, are looking for other markets to sell cars in. So they're going crazy now trying to export stuff.
Right.
So they're even more aggressively moving than they might. And they're showing up in Western Europe. And in Russia, where there's a huge gap because almost no one is selling cars in Russia anymore.
Right.
The Chinese are.
Yeah, the Chinese are like, we don't care. We'll bring our cars.
So that's one of the other things that's going on there. And we'll see how this goes. But one of the companies having a hard time in China, too, is Tesla. When we talked about them being down for 2 quarters in a row, that's global.
Yeah.
So,
well, and what's really interesting is Tesla kind of saved China's electric car market. And now they're like not doing well there.
Why would you say they saved it?
Or kickstarted it, because they came in and I believe they shared technology. And I feel like I was listening to an Auto News podcast when I was this has been like a couple of weeks and the information has like not retained to its fullest. So somebody feel free to like email us and let us know if you know the full story. But I feel like
car stuff at consumerguide.com.
There you go.
Yep.
But I feel like Tesla went in there and shared technology with some of the Chinese automakers, and then the Chinese automakers kind of like took it and ran, and then kind of.
Yeah, that might have happened because you're supposed to partner, as Sam talked about.
Yeah.
And one of the things, too, Tesla doesn't really use lithium iron phosphate batteries outside of China. They do a little bit in the U.S., and maybe they do a little bit, usually on cheap vehicles, the most affordable ones. But I think they use them a lot in China.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of sharing, too. And those are all built by a company called CATL, the largest battery maker in the world.
Okay.
These companies we just don't hear about. But the Tesla situation is interesting, too, because early on it seemed like China welcomed them, and now they're kind of
saying bye.
Yeah. So it's weird. And we're also seeing these joint ventures start to fall apart. Volkswagen had been one of the largest car makers in China. That's not the case anymore. General Motors used to sell an awful lot of cars in China. And back in the 80s, Jeep sold vehicles. They built vehicles in China, and that fell apart completely too. But it's become a very nationalistic market.
Yeah.
All right, guess what we did?
We had some really good conversations.
We did. I kept forgetting things. I apologize.
That's okay.
I should not confuse Geely and BYD, but I did.
Well, you know, and you should like not put your headphones on when you know you have a guest coming.
Exactly. Also, I should be wearing pants right now. So
pants.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm just like la 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 la. Okay, got it.
Do we know who's coming up next week?
I feel like we have somebody from Toyota next week.
All right.
I need to start looking at the schedule before I come in.
Yes, because we should probably be pimping the next show.
Yeah, we may be talking Crown Signia next week.
That's cool. For people who don't know what that is, it's basically a wagon version of the Crown. And I think it looks good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
All right. Big thanks to Sam Fiorani of AutoForecast Solutions. Thank you, Jill. Thanks to producer Randy and the good folks here at TalkZone. And as always, a shout out to my radio mentor, Steve and Johnny. Let's talk more about cars again
next week.
Next week.
Remember to check us out at consumerguide.com.
The Car Stuff Podcast is produced by J-Turn Media.
To advertise on the show, please drop us a line at carstuff@consumerguide.com.